Welcome to this deep dive. We designed it just for you, especially since you're in the military.
Yeah, we figured with your career you'd appreciate this one.
We're going way back today, talking about Carl von Clausewitz and his book On War.
Can't go wrong with Clausewitz, am I right?
Definitely a classic.
A must-read for anyone in your shoes. He makes you think about war differently. Like, what would happen if you took it to the most extreme theoretical level?
That's what we're diving into today.
That's right, we're looking at Book 8, Chapter 2, where he talks about absolute war.
Okay, before we go any further, what exactly is absolute war?
It's intense, I'll tell you that. Imagine a conflict where your only goal is completely destroying the enemy.
Oh.
Every decision, every resource, everything focused on that one objective. It's war in its purest, most extreme form.
Okay, I get why you said intense. Sounds kind of terrifying, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a pretty heavy concept. And to be clear, Clausewitz himself knew that real-world wars almost never get to this level of absoluteness.
Right, because there's always other stuff going on.
Exactly. Other factors are always at play.
So why even talk about absolute war? If it's mostly theoretical, what's the practical value for someone in the military today?
That's where Clausewitz gets really interesting. He uses this extreme case, this idea of absolute war, as a starting point.
Kind of like a measuring stick.
You got it. By understanding how war works in its purest, most extreme form, we can then see why real wars are so much more complicated.
I see. It's like having a perfect blueprint. You might not follow it exactly, but it helps you understand the deviations.
Exactly. And those deviations, the things that make real war messy and unpredictable, Clausewitz called that friction.
Friction, huh?
It's all the stuff that gets in the way of achieving that clean, decisive victory you'd see in an absolute war scenario.
I like that. Friction. So what causes this friction in warfare? Could you give us some real-world examples, either from Clausewitz's time or even from modern warfare?
Clausewitz points to what he calls the number of interests, forces, and circumstances within a state. Basically, all the things going on behind the scenes.
It's not just two armies duking it out then.
Right. Think about it. Political agendas, the economy, public opinion, even just logistical problems, all that stuff matters.
So even if you have a brilliant strategy, all these other factors can mess things up.
Exactly. Think about Napoleon's campaign in Russia.
Ah, Napoleon. Didn't go so well for him, did it?
Nope. He had big plans, wanted to conquer Russia, but the reality of supplying an army that far away, especially in winter,
Yeah, that's asking for trouble.
it created so much friction that the whole campaign fell apart.
A prime example of what can happen when friction takes over.
Definitely.
Speaking of Napoleon, Clausewitz seemed kind of obsessed with him, didn't he?
Obsessed might not be too strong a word. I mean, Clausewitz saw Napoleon as someone who really got it, you know? He understood how to reduce that friction as much as possible.
So Napoleon was kind of like the poster boy for absolute war in action then.
Not exactly. Even Napoleon, good as he was, couldn't totally escape those interests, forces, and circumstances we were talking about. But he came closer than anyone else had.
So even if you can't have true absolute war, understanding the concept helps us analyze leaders like Napoleon to see how they dealt with that friction while still going for those decisive victories.
Exactly. And that brings us to why this is also relevant to you serving in the military. See, Clausewitz isn't saying, go wage absolute war. He's giving you a new way to think about strategy altogether.
Let's break that down. Say you're planning a campaign, even leading troops on the ground today. How does this theory, almost 200 years old, apply with all the technology and stuff we have now? Drones, cyber warfare, all that.
Yeah, the specifics of war change, for sure, but the big ideas, they're surprisingly relevant, even now. First takeaway is clarity. Having that absolute war concept in your head, it forces you to define what victory actually means.
Even if you know you're not going to wipe out the enemy completely, having that clear goal in mind.
Exactly, it gives you a starting point. Then you can look at the specific friction points in your situation. What's the political climate? What about logistics, public opinion back home?
Like a giant risk assessment, but for the whole war, not just one battle.
That's a great way to put it. And that's Clausewitz for you, making you think several steps ahead. Not just where your troops go, but all these outside pressures too. Take Vietnam, for example.
The U.S. military at that time was incredibly strong.
Right, but the political situation, both in America and over in Vietnam, it created so much friction, it really affected how things turned out.
Shows that war isn't just fought on the battlefield, it's all this other stuff going on at the same time.
And that leads us to another takeaway: adaptation. Friction is going to happen, it's unavoidable. Clausewitz wants you to be ready for it, to plan for it as best you can, but also to shift gears when those plans inevitably hit a wall.
Which brings up something else Clausewitz talks about. How much can individual leaders really do? If friction is always there, can one person actually make a difference in all that chaos?
Yeah, it does make you wonder how much one person can really control. It's like you said, there's always going to be that friction messing things up, no matter how good your plan is. It's almost like trying to predict the weather, you know? You can have the best meteorologists, the most advanced technology, but there are always going to be those unexpected gusts of wind.
Exactly. So where does that leave individual leaders, even those as skilled as Napoleon? Can they really make a difference?
It's a question that Clausewitz wrestled with, too. And he says, yeah, leaders matter a lot. The choices they make, how they inspire or discourage their troops, it all adds up. But he also says that no one, not even a strategic genius, can control every single thing.
So it's a delicate balance, understanding how important leaders are while also accepting that friction will always throw you curveballs.
You got it. And that brings me to what I think is Clausewitz's biggest takeaway, especially for someone like you in today's military. Never stop learning. Never stop adapting.
So it's not enough to study the great battles of the past or master the tactics of the present.
Right. You've got to be able to look at any conflict with all its chaos and unknowns and think critically about what's really going on. Then you adjust your approach based on that.
Because the world's always changing, right? And warfare changes even faster.
Exactly. So Clausewitz gives you the tools to make sense of all that complexity, but it's on you to put those tools to use.
He gives you the map, but you have to navigate the terrain.
Perfectly said. And never forget about the human element in all of this. Morale, the fog of war, just the unpredictable ways people act under pressure. Even Clausewitz couldn't have predicted all of that.
It's humbling in a way, isn't it? But also kind of exciting, because it means that even when things look bleak or when the unexpected happens, there's still room for creativity, for ingenuity. That human spark can still make all the difference.
I like how you put that, and it's why, even centuries later, Clausewitz is still so relevant. He doesn't give you easy answers or step-by-step instructions. He makes you grapple with the hard questions about the nature of war in all its messiness.
He makes you confront the reality of conflict, but he also reminds you that people still have the power to shape how it unfolds. That's a lot to think about, but it's got to be valuable for anyone in your position.
Absolutely. Now, if there's one last thought I can leave you with, it's this. Never stop questioning, never stop learning. The world of warfare will never stop evolving, so the best way to stay ahead is to stay curious, stay adaptable, and yeah, keep a little Clausewitz in your back pocket.
Great advice. As always, thanks for diving deep with us. Until next time.